All right, welcome back, everybody. What's up? It is another edition of Now Betting for the Phillies. Hey, Mike and Bob, Phillies chat. Mike Gill, Bob Wenkel. We are back as the offseason is officially open for business. Free agents can sign, but likely won't. We'll find out when the free agents may actually sign. It's something we're going to dive into today. What if they don't for a while? Let's get into all that and more. We got some news with the Phillies and kind of an offseason primer. We got Bob Wenkel, Mike Gill. It's a Mike and Bob baseball chat. Bob Wenkel, what's up, buddy?
Hot stove for you here. It's finally getting a little cooler out. It feels like we're getting into the deep fall, coming into the winter here a little bit now. So starting to have these conversations. Like I got to be honest with you. We talked a little bit before the show. I have a hard time at the end of a season just turning the page immediately and going, okay, let's talk about qualifying offers and let's talk about mutual options and who are they going to bring back and what are they going to do? And this team specifically, because though they have some big decisions to make, it doesn't feel like it's a lot of players coming inbound. It feels like, can we just keep what we have? And I know that they have a lot to sort through, but it really is a strange place because this team still has such a great opportunity to win 93 plus games in 2026 and find itself on the short list of World Series contenders. But you have that fatigue and that sense of deflation after another disappointing postseason exit. It's just, I don't know about you, Mike, but for me, like it's a little bit hard in this moment to get juiced up over it. It really is. And I say that as someone that's hosting a Phillies podcast. You know,
I had so my biggest enjoyment last week was the spring training schedule came out. I've been going for 20 years, so it was like Christmas Day. It came out late this year. So when I asked, like we have a group of people that go, we've been going for 20 years. I asked one of the other groups that goes at the same time, and they said they're so disenchanted that they're cutting their trip down this year.
Wow.
And these are people who are like hardcore go whether like team's good, not, I don't care. I don't go because the team's good or bad. I go because I just love going to Clearwater, baseball. It's a great environment. But they were like, the team has disappointed me so much so that I'm thinking about not going for as long. Now they are going, but just not as many games this year.
So I try to check myself because I feel a little bit of that myself. And I think that a lot of people that are really into the Phillies, care about the franchise, want to see this group be successful, feel the same way. But do we sometimes just get lost in the grand scheme of things here where we say, like, this is a team that for the fourth straight year gave the fans a really good summer of baseball, gave the fans real hope, and it's probably positioned to do it again next year. And I think for the years after that, I don't think we're going to get the 2011 fall off a cliff for 8 seasons the way that we did in the previous decade. But who knows? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Point being, like, we know where this franchise has been. And I mean, as a 40-year-old guy, my entire childhood was like the 93 Phillies sucked for a decade, got really good, sucked for a decade. Like, shouldn't we be I don't want to say appreciative of what they've given us? That's not the right word. They haven't closed the deal. But
well, your point is interesting. Like they had the 07, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then they did fall off the cliff. And part of that is because they held on to the 07 guys. At what point are they holding on to the guys that they can't get rid of? Like, then they could have got rid of guys. They kind of chose not to. They extended Ryan Howard. You could have traded Rollins or Utley. They just kind of didn't want to do that. And then they got hurt. You got Trey Turner for 8 more years. You've got Harper for 6 more years. You got Nola. I mean, these are guys that are in that area of the Utley, Rollins, and Howard, but you can't get rid of them. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of move on.
The most pressing question: can you get rid of them? And so you start with Kyle Schwarber, you start with JT Realmuto, because I do think that Ranger Suarez is gone. And maybe the market comes back to the Phillies a little bit. They could do a shorter-term deal. Would they entertain that? I'm not saying that they've totally closed the book, but I think where the market is going to take Ranger Suarez, it's going to be elsewhere. But with Realmuto and Schwarber, you consider how important these two players were to their success in 25 and how important they've been in the clubhouse and just the overall stature. Do you feel like the right thing to do is re-sign these two players? And I think that that's the starting point in any conversation that you have about the offseason.
I hate to be Dave Dombrowski right now. I think he's in a terrible spot because I'm watching the World Series, and I would spin it to you. I watched the Blue Jays and how they got there. Completely different. I mean, they both spent a ton of money. But the Blue Jays team is like a young group of guys. Vlad Guerrero's in the prime of his career. He looks like he's been there and sounds like he's been there forever. He's in like his mid-20s. Bichette, now he's a free agent, but mid-20s. They've got guys that no one's ever heard of before, and those guys stepped up. They had a guy that, you know me, I've always like give the young kids a chance. Savage was pitching in Dunedin, and they said, come on up and see what you got. So they went that route. Meanwhile, the Dodgers are the Phillies. They just keep bringing back Muncy and keep bringing back like their guys, and they got Freeman, who's got compared to Harper as well. He's not elite anymore, but he's still Freddie Freeman. And some of their guys are getting older, so that made me think like, is letting Kyle Schwarber walk really going to improve this team?
Well, what's the template for winning a World Series? Like the Blue Jays didn't win the World Series. They were a game closer than the Phillies were in 2022. Like as much as we can say, well, wow, look how the Blue Jays did it. Are the Blue Jays, the Toronto Blue Jays, are they the model of how to shape a baseball team in 2025? I don't necessarily think that.
Right, are they going to be in the World Series again? You know the Dodgers are going to be back most likely.
I don't think that they're going to be back next year.
Exactly. So then you follow the Dodgers lead, right?
But the Dodgers were not terribly impressive from an offensive standpoint throughout most of the postseason. Obviously, Ohtani had his moments against the Reds and then deeper in the playoffs to close out the NLCS. And he had his moments in the World Series. He's otherworldly. Yamamoto, I thought, really was the difference. He clearly was the difference maker in the World Series. I don't even know that needs to be said. But other than that, like that team had a lot of the same problems the Phillies had, where like big names, pedigree, kind of underperformed. The only difference is they just didn't have that one, like the Kike Hernandez hit against the Phillies in Game 1 of the NLDS. Like they just didn't have those moments, the Phillies. So I don't know that you need to totally turn this roster inside out. And I don't know that you need to say goodbye to Kyle Schwarber. I don't know that you need to say goodbye to JT Realmuto. But the years and the money, it's real. I think you have to re-sign both of them. I think if you're Dave Dombrowski, you say you're.
What are your alternatives? Like you let Kyle Schwarber walk. How do you replace it? Now, I don't think he's going to hit 56 home runs again. There's your other problem. Okay, how do I replace 56 home runs? I bring back the guy that hit 56 home runs, except for I don't know that he's going to hit 56 home runs again. Like eventually that number starts to go this way. JT, what do I have in my organization to replace him? Nothing. But if I bring him back, he's not even going to be the mediocre offensive player he was this year. He's probably going to be a little less of a mediocre player. So you have to balance of like, I can't lose this, but what am I getting if I do bring them back? And they're in a lousy spot with that.
So, I mean, I think that the way I tend to look at this, I've said at different points, how do you let Realmuto walk? Like, you cannot let him go. But I think that the reality of it is that you probably can. I mean, if JT Realmuto goes elsewhere and signs for, let's say, 3 years and north of $40 million, like could the Phillies go out on a trade market and get a guy that, can play 90 to 100 games, hit 240, hit 13 home runs, and then you try to build offensively around that? Like, yeah, you might be able to survive without the services of JT Realmuto. I wouldn't prefer that. I prefer they sign him, at least looking at, through the lens of 2026. But could you survive that? I think so. I don't think that JT Realmuto walking necessarily precludes you from winning a World Series next year. But when it comes to Schwarber, I get the argument against it. Will he age well into his mid-30s? He might. He's actually, I think, in better shape now than he was when he was 28 years old. So credit to him. But I can't get over subtracting 56 home runs from the lineup, even if he's just a DH, even if, he's not a complete hitter. I just don't think that where this team's at. And how do you sell that to a guy like Bryce Harper? Like, hey, Bryce, we just took your catcher buddy. He's out of here. And by the way, we're going to take the guy that was, top 5 MVP vote getter in the National League this year, and we got rid of him too. But we're fully committed to you for another 6-7 years. Let's go win one.
Yeah,
so that's a hard sell.
So if I told you, I see some reporting today, the Phillies are worth watching in the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes. Okay, I replaced Schwarber with Tucker. I'm not getting an equal swap there. I'm getting a younger swap, but am I better? Am I better if I just say, you know what, let me go get Kyle Tucker? Because the perception needs to be I need to change this roster up a little bit. Like, that's where you're flawed in, like, well, I need to change something, but I don't want to lose the guys that I have the option of losing. So now you're back to square one of I'm bringing back the same guys, and I can't change the roster that I currently have because I'm stuck unless I can trade guys that nobody wanted last year.
Sure. I mean, as far as Kyle Tucker goes, I think it starts with he's probably going to require 8, 9, 10 years. You're probably talking about him coming in around 35 to 38 million a year. I know he makes you younger. He'll be 26 on opening day next spring. He'll be 29. 29 in 2026 on opening day. A slightly above average defender, an instinctive base runner. He's a more complete player, and he certainly changes the feel of your team if it's Schwarber out, Tucker in. But if you're the Phillies, do you really want to tie yourself up in another decade-long contract too? That's a question that they're going to have to answer.
I think a lot of these teams are going to have to start evaluating whether they want to sign these 8, 10, 13-year deals again. I mean, none of them seem to have worked out that shortstop season. Bogarts is an awful deal. In fact, it's one of the worst contracts maybe in all of it. Turner's just right up there as one of the worst, even though he's been somewhat productive. The fact that you have it for 8 more years is nauseating.
Yeah, well, and I think that, one of the other things that puts a little bit of a wrench into it is that you don't know what's going to happen in 2027. And I think right now that people around the sport, and this isn't really being talked about a ton yet because we tend to focus on the here and now, but I think a lot of people around the industry feel that it is very unlikely that they will play baseball on time 2 years from now, if at all. And what does that do in the calculus of roster building and how you're going to allocate money in long-term dollars? And, how does that affect the free agency class this year? Do guys say like, well, I certainly want more protection. I want it more up front. Like, I don't – it's very interesting to see if as these stories progress and the rumors ramp up, what does that looming lockout or the possibility of a lockout do to how this thing unfolds?
Yeah, that's for definitely something to keep an eye on. What's next for the Phillies as free agency opens? Here's another question for you, Bob. I mean, Bryce Harper did not sign until spring training. What if Kyle Schwarber's still sitting out there in early March, late February, and he hasn't signed yet? How do you figure out what you want to do and then risk potential? Like, this is where baseball – like, you almost, if you're baseball, to make this more entertaining, and that's not – but for the fans to be allowed, like, you got to say, hey, listen, it opens on this day. You have until this day to sign, Otherwise, you're not eligible. I mean, you got to do something to, like, make it more where this team's not sitting held hostage by the fact that they don't know if the guy's going to sign or not. What do I do if he doesn't? Well, then you have to make that decision. Okay, but, man, that's a tough way to do business.
It is. I think my assumption working here is that they will probably get Schwarber done. I think that it is more than likely than not that Kyle Schwarber is back here. And I think that the more you read, the more you talk to people, that seems to be the industry sense as well. What's it going to take? Is it going to take that 5th year? Do you want to get into a 5-year deal with Kyle Schwarber? I would not. I don't love the idea of having to go to 4, but it's probably going to take 4, 120, 4, 130 to get it done. I look at the timeline of it. You're right. You do run the risk the further you go into the offseason, you might miss out on other guys. If it's going to be Kyle Schwarber and the Phillies, my thought would be that Kyle Schwarber, as a service to the Phillies, would do that deal quickly. Like, I'm not saying that he's the first player off the board, but I think that the Phillies have to kind of know where this thing is trending with Kyle Schwarber so that they can adequately plan and pivot if it's going to go in a different direction. But thing I can't get over. Like, you could talk about removing Kyle Schwarber from the lineup. Who's the replacement going to be? Reframing this team with letting a guy like Schwarber walk and bringing in a guy like Bregman to play third base. You're getting another middle-of-the-order bat. It's a different type of bat. It's a little bit more of a complete bat. I still can't get over the idea of this player, given what he means in the clubhouse, given that this team's tapped a little bit for power as it is, removing their one true power hitter, and then having a phone call saying, like, you know, the Reds were willing to go 4 years, 121. We're just not willing to match it. I just can't see that happening.
Let me ask you a question about Bregman. By the way, I would love for Bregman to be here to see the confusion of some of my listeners between Alec and Alex. Alex replacing Alec and playing the same position. Bregman's a great player. Is he all that different of a hitter at this stage or than Alec Bohm is? I mean, he's a 272 hitter. He's maybe got a little more power. I don't know, last year 18 homers. I know he missed a chunk, so he's probably more of a 25 homer guy. But are you going to start to see a third baseman that, you know, as he gets older, hitting 18 to 22 homers, hitting 270, playing third base? I mean, is that the answer?
Well, some of it's about pedigree. Some of it is about being a gamer. Some of it's about being a big spot guy. Like, I'm going to carry you guys on my back. You can trust me in this moment. Like, I know that you look at where Alec Bohm is at as a hitter, and he's a decent hitter, right? But we talk about this team not being able to, like, kind of rise up in the moment. Now, in fairness to Alec Bohm, he actually, I thought, had some pretty good at-bats against the Dodgers in the NLDS this year. But when you just look at the big picture, does bringing in a guy like Bregman that has a little bit more of a big game feel, a little bit more of a grinder type, a little bit more of a, I'll say this, like a little bit more of a professional, a little bit more of a professional feel he brings with him. Yeah, like, I mean, that's the type of player that changes the look and the feel of the team, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, listen, Bregman, and here would be the question. I don't mind Bohm if he's hitting seventh. I don't need him. I can't use him hitting fourth. If I bring Bregman in here, are you putting him in the middle of the order? Probably. So you have a guy hitting fourth. Is that adequate enough to, you know, Bohm obviously cannot hit in that spot. They just don't have anybody else to do it. And he's been a pretty good RBI guy. I mean, he's been up around 100 RBI 2 years. That being said, I can certainly acknowledge as a guy who doesn't have a problem with Bohm, I have a problem with Bohm hitting fourth or fifth. If he's hitting sixth, I'm okay. If he's hitting seventh, I like it. So if I bring in Bregman to replace him, okay, now I'm hitting Bregman in, I guess, the 4 hole. Is that what we're talking about here? Is that good enough? That's where I say,
well, look,
you're getting a more professional hitter, and I do agree with that. I definitely agree that in a big spot you feel, hey, Alec Bregman's up, as opposed to Alec Bohm is up.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that the big thing that you have to kind of look at here as well is that this team wanted to move on from Alec Bohm an offseason ago. They didn't. It didn't materialize the way that they had hoped to, or that hoped it would. Like, they would like to move on from him. Now, has there ever been a team that was going to move off a player and then did an extra year with them? Sure. I mean, you go look at the Eagles, right? I mean, they were going to move off of Darius Slay. They brought him back. They were going to move off of Josh Sweat. They brought him back. Like, these things do happen. Mm-hmm. It's not to say that the Phillies want to totally wash their hands of Alec Bohm, but I think that there's a motivation here to upgrade at third base. I think that there's a motivation to get maybe a longer-term solution in at third base as well. And I know you look at the minor leagues and you say, well, they have some guys down there that could maybe come up and fit the bill. I think that the Phillies would like to have a stud third baseman that they could pencil in 3, 4, 5 years out. And it's been a thing that's kind of haunted them now for the last, a decade plus. They thought they had it in Michael Franco. They thought they had it in Alec Bohm, and it just hasn't materialized the way that they hoped it would. I don't think that Bregman's coming here. I still think it's going to be Schwarber and some tweaks and status quo for the most part. And I think people are going to be a little bit underwhelmed by that. But when you start talking about Tucker, it's hard not to salivate a little bit. When you start talking about Bregman, it's hard not to kind of think, all right, like that could be fun. If it were Schwarber and Bregman, hell yeah, let's go. But,
well, it's almost like, it's just something different. I don't know that we're substantially better, or maybe we are. I don't know. We're just different. But it's different in a way that you're losing Schwarber, and I don't know that difference good. If you lose Bohm, I can get on board with that difference seems better. But the other question is that we'll transition into is Harrison Bader opted out, which we expected to happen. It was a mutual option. So this just seems like, okay, he opted out. Now what? Now what? Like, he played center field and finally locked down a position that has been awful for like 5 years, if not longer. I mean, you can't name the last good Phillies. It's Shane Victorino. Does that count? Like, so is it just a fait accompli that he opted out and you bring him back? Or is it a fait accompli that he opted out and you move on from him? Because he came here and was really good. He has been in the league for a long time and hasn't been really good. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with this decision as well. They have no win answers to every question, I feel like. And this is the big one. He was awesome here, and he gave you what you needed. But can he do that again? Because he hasn't done that where he's been before. There's a reason he's been in St. Louis and the Yankees and the Mets. And, he's been all over the place because they're disappointed with what they get from Bader.
Yeah, I think that there was a world when you do the deal for Harrison Bader and you see that mutual option that you thought, well, we might get him back on that option. Like, if he plays pretty well for us, this could be a guy that we kind of say, like, yeah, we'll do another year at $10 million. Now it looks like he's going to get 2 years, at least 2 years. He might get a third. And what's the average value of that going to be? Somewhere probably between 12 and 14, maybe even 15 a year if a team gets nuts, if a team gets desperate. So I think you're probably looking at somewhere between 2 years, 26 million, 3 years, 34 million, somewhere in that range. Like, you're not going to have to break the bank, but like, what is Harrison Bader? Like, if you bring him back and you're the Phillies, you're doing it to make him an everyday center fielder for 2026. But you have to be comfortable with the possibility that Harrison Bader is more of just a journeyman type player who might have had a career year last season and isn't your answer in center field in 2027, if there is a 2027 season. So you have to almost be willing to pay for Harrison Bader as a fourth outfielder beyond 26, I think, if you're going to do that deal. Maybe he's figured it out. Like, maybe at 31, he's just coming into his prime. It's taken him some time. Wouldn't be the craziest thing, but...
Well, let me ask you this. You had a center fielder who was very good defensively and could not hit. Johan Rojas. Could you just say Bader's worth it because he plays a great center field and he might hit 240? Like, is that how you look at it and just say, we had Rojas, he couldn't hit a lick, but he played a really good center field. We got away with that. We know this guy can at least be a professional at bat and play a very high-level center field. What's that worth?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only difference and the only thing I'll kind of push back on here, and being on your show and having talked about Johan Rojas at length over the course of the last 2 years, I'm not a Johan Rojas believer. I don't think that he gives you a professional at bat. I think that his lack of focus on the bases at times is just a killer. I don't think that where this team's at, knocking on the door of trying, saying like, hey, we can win a championship. I don't think that you can play him and give him bulk innings in center field and win a championship. Unless
I would agree with that, by the way. I am on board with that, what you're saying.
But I'll say something nice about him, though. Like, do I believe in Johan Rojas' defensive profile over the next 3 years more so than Harrison Bader's? Like, yes. So I don't know that it's fair to say that Harrison Bader is going to play the same center field that Johan Rojas would for the next 3 years. I know that's not necessarily the question. It's not an either or proposition, but Bader's good in center field. Is he great in center field? Does he have the ability to be great in center field? No, he doesn't. But I think he's adequate to slightly above average.
Okay, that's interesting because
for me, like, to answer your question, like, if he's going to hit 240 and hit 14 home runs, like, I'm out. Like, I don't need to spend $12 million on that.
And that's who he's been, right?
Yeah. And so what you're trying to evaluate on the fly in the short amount of time that you had him is what we saw in a very short sprint, the real Harrison Bader. And he was good before he got here. He was having a good year. It just went to a different level once he came here.
Yeah.
And then again, if you're an organization that values camaraderie, vibes, I know everyone like rolls their eyes when they hear that word, but like, he obviously was a good fit during the time that he was here. How much do they value that part of it? Would they be a little bit more motivated than another team? to maybe make him stay here. That's all part of the equation that they're going to have to sift through.
Well, just for the people that are watching, Bader, when he came to Philly, played 50 games, hit 305, 361 on base, 463 slug, 824 OPS, 5 homers, 16 RBI. So he came over here in 50 games, and he ripped it.
You do wonder, I know, my guy Jack Fritz, who I enjoy quite a bit, but he would do the tweet where it was like, it's a shame the Phillies were a Harrison Bader injury away from winning the World Series this year, and I think he's a little tongue in cheek in saying that, but you look at Brandon Marsh having to play those innings once Bader got hurt in Game 1, and how much – I know that we don't want to say the Phillies didn't beat the Dodgers because of Harrison Bader, because that's not true. But, could that have made a difference at some point? It might have.
Sure. Well, just look at – Just look at, as you mentioned, Kike Hernandez, Rojas, Miguel Rojas, the level of player that came up with a big hit.
To me, that was when they got him. I'm like, you know what? He might be that guy. He might be that guy first and second, 7th inning. He's not Harper. He's not Schwarber. He's not one of the big name guys, but he's the guy that's going to make it go. And you need that guy. I mean, look, I don't want to diminish. We always look at a vacuum of Philadelphia and what the Phillies have done in their postseason history, but you go back and look at it. I mean, the Phillies don't sniff a World Series in 2008 without Shane Victorino. I mean, it just doesn't.
You need that guy. Mike McGarry. Mike McGarry from the press asked a question to Dombrowski, and he was like, "How do you find the guy who maybe over 162 is not a big part of your team, but has that knack?" And the answer is, I don't know. How do you find that guy? I mean, Kike Hernandez, I think, is a free agent, but he's 37 years old. Do you just say, hey, teams have gone down that road before, though, where it's hey, I want the magic pixie dust of that guy, and then he comes to you and he stinks, right? So that's the hard part, is how do you find that guy? Harrison Bader, if you remember that run he had with the Yankees in 22, I mean, he had 335 homers in a 9-game stretch for the Yankees. Now he went to the Mets in 24 and was terrible for the Mets in a playoff. He was terrible for the Mets, for the Cardinals in their playoffs. So he's a 238 career playoff hitter, Harrison Bader. So you don't know which level of Bader you're getting. The question is, you don't have another option in center field. Right now, you're going to play Johan Rojas next to Justin Crawford, or you're going to try Crawford in center field. You're going to put Marsh back in center field. Now what? What do you do? There
are 3 things. So I'm not a solutions guy, but I'm a observations guy. And what I will tell you is that, I will make a bet with you if you want to do this. Brandon Marsh will not play more than 20 games in center field next season. The Phillies do not want to play him in center field. He's not a center fielder. I think Brandon Marsh knows he's not a center fielder. He's a fine corner outfield option. You play him in left, you can play him in right. And he'll, I think, give you above average, not Gold Glove, but above average defense. He cannot play center field. He can't.
I agree wholeheartedly, and to me, the best option is if you bring Crawford up to play left. I don't know what you're going to do in center, and Marsh and some right-handed bat go play in right field. I don't
believe that they feel Crawford is a center fielder either, and so.
Well, that's why I say, what do? You don't bring back Bader, and you don't have anybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is where on November 10th, you thank the system for not unfolding the way that the NFL does, where the first 48 hours, the 2 days leading up to free agency are chaos. I mean, look at this. It's
Mike McGarry brought up a great point on my radio show, which is baseball should make you sign by Christmas so that you can get the new jersey and the teams get an influx of new money for jersey sales for that new guy that signs.
Absolutely. Mike's onto something there.
I like that idea.
A sharp guy, though, Mike McGarry.
I like that idea. Brandon Marsh will not play more than 20 games. And I would hope. I hope you're right on that, by the way.
Yeah. They're in trouble if I'm not right on that. I mean, but here's the thing, I just want to say this because I know we're coming close to time here, and we're going to go longer as things happen, and there's real developments to really lock into. But I will just say, this is, for all the frustration and as down as everybody is, this is a good team still. Even if it's Kyle Tucker or it's Kyle Schwarber or if it's Alex Bregman, or it's a tweak here and a tweak there, and like they aren't super splashy, and you kind of feel a little bit underwhelmed. Like when things open up on opening day next year, they're going to be, barring injury or catastrophic injury, a team with one of the 5 best odds to win the World Series next year, and it might be one of the 3 best. Three best odds. I mean,
they already do. By the way, the odds came out. You asked the last episode that we did. The odds, they're out. They're like plus 1,000. I think they have the 3rd best odds in baseball. I'll double check, but yeah, they're out there, and they're top 3 from what I recall.
And like that's so you go into next year and you're like, who can win the World Series next year? Put the Yankees on the list because you can never count them out. You put the Dodgers on the list because they're the favorite. You put the Phillies on the list because then they're aggressive.
Dodgers plus 370, Yankees plus 750, Phillies plus 1,100. They're your top 3. Astros, Mariner, and the Astros didn't even make the playoffs last year. So you're saying, why are they number 4? Mariners, Mets, Red Sox, Braves, Brewers, Blue Jays, who just went to the World Series.
You have a lot of work to do to get. I mean, look, it's a new show. People haven't maybe heard me before. I'm as critical of the Phillies as anybody. So this is not like waving the red pom-poms, the red and blue pom-poms, and everything they do is right, and go Phillies. That's not me. But a lot of those teams that you just listed have a lot of work to do to catch up to the Phillies. I'm not saying that they won't pass them, but right now as we talk, they have a lot of work. Mets have a lot of work to do to pass the Phillies. Brewers, best team in the National League last year. Thought that there was a little bit of luck involved in that. It's a quality team. I don't put them on the same level as the Phillies. I just don't. I need to see that again. I need to see more consistency there. I don't think that they hit enough. Teams can do it, but right now, as things stand, the Phillies are in a pretty decent place. There are 25. I would say there's probably 22 to 24 teams that right now would swap places with the Phillies in a heartbeat. And I think as a fan, you have to you can be frustrated as all hell. You can question what's going on with Bryce Harper. Does he want to be here? Do the Phillies want him here?
So you're going to end up in a ditch?
Yeah, we didn't get to that. But there are a lot of problems, and there's a lot of things for this team to figure out, and they could screw it up, and anxiety is real and probably warranted. But there are, as I said, there are at least 2/3 of the league, 75% of the league, that in a heartbeat would swap places with the Phillies.
All right, let's do a couple quick hitters. José Alvarado's back. Is the back end now, do you enter with the back end actually a strength?
I think there's
like the lefty, righty back end. I don't think they're going to flip-flop based on who's up the bat, because generally Alvarado can get out both lefties and righties, and obviously Duran, you're not going to just pitch in the 8th inning because you feel like it.
Well, I really like Duran, obviously. Who doesn't? Alvarado, I think at $9 million for a year is a flyer worth taking, and you probably feel like he's a good option for your mix. I still think that they're a guy short, a trustworthy arm short back there, left or right. Let's assume that Orion Kerkering is back at this point. I can't trust him to be that guy. It's not like, hey, you can't let him on the field, but I don't know that I'm penciling him into as hey, high leverage 8th inning, righty on righty, go get him, buddy. I don't think we're there with him. So I think that they need someone else to be competitive in that mix. Now, Dave Dombrowski, after the season ended, didn't seem to really express the urgency with the bullpen the way that I would view it. Even if they were to bring back Alvarado, I still think they need another guy.
I do as well. I would be a proponent of bringing back Walker Buehler. I know everyone's like, whatever, they didn't even use him. I thought that was a guy they could have used in that 6th inning instead of Robertson, a guy who profiles as a starter, big game experience, won a World Series game, followed up a couple days later, saved a game. I need that guy come playoff time.
I wonder what is left. I do, and I think that
Fair.
Concerns about what's left in the tank there are valid, but if he were Joe Ross in 2026, where you use him as a long man, you use him as rotational depth if you need to really get to that point in the evolution of your starting rotation, he's a viable option, be a fifth starter guy, 6th starter guy. I wouldn't mind doing that. I wouldn't be totally opposed to it.
I would rather have him start 5th games than Taijuan Walker. I never need to see Taijuan Walker start a game ever. It's never, ever, ever happening. So just say, listen, from day one, you are a middle reliever, and then maybe over 162, you develop some level of trust in a role for him that you can, I say maximize, utilize him. But you know he's never going to start a game.
So I'll just say this about Taijuan Walker. If he's back, and I guess it's trending right now to where he would be, would a team be interested in Taijuan Walker on 1 year, $9 million? The Phillies just pay half of the salary.
Sure, if they can do that, fine.
Probably would be some interest. And so then you have to ask yourself, if you're the Phillies, is there value in having that insurance policy? He's been here. Why not just keep him, ride out the deal? I'm interested to see what they do with that. But I think that the ask would be, and if you look at his 25 season, you'd say he pretty much did everything that they wanted him to do. He wasn't good. He didn't inspire a ton of confidence, but he survived it. He battled. He gutted it out. He was a professional. You would like to see, in a perfect world, him get one assignment with consistency.
Totally agree.
Into that. I will tell you, though, and I'm totally on board with that, except that I think his value at this point is, and his upside and his true value is what he did last year. I don't think that 22 starts with consistency for Taijuan Walker is going to net a good result. And I don't think if you were to make him exclusively a long man or a first guy out of the bullpen type of guy, that would go particularly well, because I don't think his stuff plays. So I love the idea of giving him run in one spot, but I don't, here on this team as constructed, I don't think that he fits in any one role. So if he is back, I think it's going to be a lot of the same that you saw this year.
But you know what? A team I think I talked about them for Ranger Suarez. A team that needs a starter but doesn't want to pay number one money or just needs someone to eat innings, like Baltimore, who thinks they're good. Their pitching just been a disaster.
Make 28 to 32 starts for us. Give us 5 innings. You don't have to light the world on fire. Maybe a team with a young staff that could use a little guidance, use a little direction. I've said this on your show, I've said it on my other shows. He's liked in that clubhouse. He's really liked in that clubhouse.
And he could have bitched and moaned about what they did with him this year, yo-yoing him back and forth and yada yada. But I know what you are, and I don't need you. I'm sorry. I hate to be harsh, but you're never going to start a game for me in the playoffs. So I got to find someone who either can do that, and then I also trust to pitch in the bullpen, because they don't trust him to pitch out of the bullpen either. So now you're taking up a roster spot on the playoff roster, and I'm not using you at all. So that would be one. How about this? We'll get out on this one. Scooble's name has been mentioned as a guy you trade for. Would you get another top-end starter and just go that route after watching these World Series and saying, look at the pitching, and that's what won? You have Ohtani, you have Mookie Betts, you have Freddie Freeman, but in the end you won because you just had more pitching than the other team.
It's hard for the Phillies, I think, to forget that they won't do this and they don't have the prospects and they're not going to wipe out their system to do it. But if you're the Phillies after the last 2 postseasons, or you're a Phillies fan or a talent evaluator in the front office, pitching has not been the problem. They have gotten – that's what's so frustrating about what's played out in both 24 and 25 is that they've gotten the pitching. They went toe-to-toe from a pitching perspective with this outrageous Dodgers staff. It was absolutely remarkable. And they outpitched that staff in spots this postseason. It's just, to me, I don't know how you can plan for a 5-game series and say we've got the right offense to go do it. But the Phillies, from a pitching perspective, have been so damn good. And you would hope that you're going to get Wheeler back. And I think you still have one really good year of Zach Wheeler left, assuming that he comes back, in good shape from this injury, this shoulder issue.
All right. Well, baseball free agency is underway. No one has really signed. We don't anticipate anything moving here. And, of course, we'll have stuff all offseason long right here on Now Batting for the Phillies and Mike and Bob Phillies Baseball Chat. Well, we chatted for about 40 minutes there, so there was a lot involved, obviously.
Yeah, we didn't talk about Harper versus Manfred, and I actually thought we were going to do all that. I'm okay though. Don't worry, I'm fine.
Well, I actually saw just the quotes of that's how you end up in a ditch, but I didn't know I know what it was centered around, but I haven't dug deep into what the repercussion or thoughts of what possibly could happen or it was a bizarre comment to make, don't you think?
Yeah, feels
Because
aggressive.
originally last week we were going to go Friday, but we kind of got tied up, so we're actually going to be moving mostly to Mondays at this time for everybody. So we have all week for you to kind of consume everything because everybody's busy over the weekend. But one of the things was like the whole Harper telling Gelb that he was kind of ticked off by the fact that Dombrowski said what he said. So he never really, and then this kind of came out, and I got to be honest with you, I think most fans would side with the commissioner here. Like, I don't think people looked at Harper and like, that's our guy. I think people are like, no, we don't care what you want, Harper.
I don't know how the general fan looks at it. In terms of the labor situation, this is the billionaires versus millionaires. Get ready to hear that more than you'll ever want to hear, I don't know how people look at it from a labor perspective, but I do get the sense that public sentiment in this city, I think, is starting to shift away from Bryce a little bit. He's a great player. I think that he's an all-timer. I think that he's one really good year again, and Phillies winning a championship. Like, if they win a championship, it all changes, right? But these last couple of years have been a little strange with him. And I don't know that anybody's ever going to say, like, I'm pro Manfred in this interaction specifically, but, like, there definitely has not been you don't talk to Bryce Harper that way. That's our guy. Like, I haven't heard any of that. Like, there hasn't really been any.
No, but I don't think people are going to say you're pro Manfred, but I think what people will say is, I think most fans would rather a salary cap. I think fans would be on board for that. Like, they're not saying, hey, I really want to see players make $300 million, $600 million, $700 million contract. I don't think anybody can relate to that.
Well, I think what people want to see is a salary floor. More than
some sort of.
You do need. I mean, I'm a believer that you do need more structure in the sport. I don't look. There's two different ways, and then we'll get out of here. I don't mean to turn this into an economics show, but there's two different ways to look at it. You can say, oh, the Dodgers are ruining baseball. But, like, as a Dodgers fan or as a fan of the sport, you say, like, I love the fact that they are, all in financially, and you could say it's nonsense what they're doing with the deferments to Ohtani. Again, it's in the rules. And so if you can circumvent or you can work within the guidelines of what's presented to you, I don't fault Dodgers ownership for doing that.
No, not at all.
But the problem is then you turn around and you see a team like the Pirates or, the Rockies have gotten cheap in recent years. And you sit there and you say, like, well, come on. Like, we're not playing the same sport here. Like, if you're a fan and you don't like the system at this point, I totally understand it. Working through how to recalibrate the system is a totally different conversation. It almost requires like a political mindset. Like,
I was going to say, this is akin to the healthcare situation. Well, it's so far bad that it's unfixable at this moment. You got somebody that screams, you got free healthcare in other countries. Yeah, because they started that 200 years ago is how that happened. Like, so baseball's in the same boat. This all started 200 years ago. Now, all of a sudden, you're just going to hit a button to change the whole way that sport's been going for its entire existence, and that's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's tough to do that. And I don't expect it to happen, but, it would be nice to see some type of penalty, some type of threshold from a floor perspective so that you're not getting a disparity where one team is eclipsing,
well, and this year,
million, and the other team.
I will say this. The way that baseball's set up with the playoffs, it does give everybody a shot because the middle market teams play in the middle market divisions. So you're going to have Cincinnati and Milwaukee. It's just whether or not can they get hot at that right time and play against the team that's making. So you're always going to – it's like, we're in Jersey, Group 3 baseball against Group 5, Group 1 versus Group 4. There's a difference in the way those teams' depth is. So a Group 1 team is going to have a trouble beating a Group 4 team, but they're in the mix. The Brewers, the Reds, the Pirates, they can get to the playoffs, but for them to really win it, they're going to have to be really, really smart and really, really good.
About like take your flavor of the year, your one-offs, or a team that might have the right core for 2 or 3 years, but then sustain it. So you get Tariq Skubal, right? Oh, he's a great Tiger, the best pitcher in the game. Well, where's he going to be next year? So that's the problem because you can get the Tigers in the postseason and they can have a legitimate shot because you're going to have to face that guy twice, and that sucks. But in a year from now, he's going to be Garrett Cole. He's going to be – I know he left the Astros and they spent, but he's destined for a big
People forget Garrett Cole was on the Pirates.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the other problem is that you can't sustain, or these teams won't sustain.
And the Blue Jays had the 5th highest payroll in baseball, even though you probably didn't hear of.
Yeah, it felt like a true underdog story. The Toronto Blue Jays were not an underdog story.
Who makes all the – well, I guess Guerrero makes a lot of money. Who else on that team makes so much money that you're like – they have the 5th highest payroll in baseball? Oh, they do have Springer.
Yeah, Springer.
Other than that, I mean – Bichette's a free agent coming up. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they keep that thing together. All right. There you go. Now batting for the Phillies. I'm Mike and Bob. Phillies Baseball Chat is in the book. Subscribe. And we'll be back on Monday with another edition. You can watch it on the X platform and on YouTube. And the audio version is on all podcasting platforms on the BFA Live Sports channel. All right, Bob. Thanks, man.
All right.
See you, everybody.